You're listening to the Karmic Mirror podcast, where we explore the wisdom tucked within the layers of the self help world.
Together, we bridge the gap between esoteric teachings and practical tools for everyday life, with self love and personal growth at the heart of each conversation.
Whether you're a seasoned seeker or just beginning your path, join us and uncover the magic within and around you. Hello, and welcome back to this short and sweet bonus episode today. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Michelle. Short and sweet is right. Great way to intro it.
Yes. So, oftentimes, so often, actually, I'd say probably 100% of the time, the conversation in our podcast episodes never end when the mics turn off. Oftentimes, whatever the themes or topics we're discussing linger, they evolve. So many aha moments happen after we stop recording. And today's episode is really kind of a glimpse into what that looks like. After we wrapped on recording our most recent episode with Sarah Duncan. And if you haven't listened to it, it's so incredible. Please do. Sarah Duncan is a human design expert and hypnotherapy expert. And the insights just continued to flow in such spontaneous voice notes that we couldn't keep it to ourselves. I think we mentioned a bunch of times during the episode how Sarah will introduce a human design aspect to us, and then it's just, we'll talk about it, and then, like I said, it's like we stop talking, and then there's more questions or something sparks in insight, and so today is no different.
So, we have this bonus episode for you all because as you hear in our human design episodes, we can take a journey in many different places of a chart and a design and gain wisdom from that. And very early on with Sarah, she noticed one thing in particular about my chart and Michelle's chart that we weren't even keen to. Keen to. When do I use that word?
First of all, I love that word.
I love it too, but I must be in Michigan with my family. We're like
Yeah.
going old school here. Uh, and one of the first things she had called out is, oh my gosh, you're a quad left, Allie, and Michelle, you're a quad right. And so we touched on it in that episode with Sarah. And I really encourage you to go back and listen to that if you have any interest. But in this bonus episode, we share the post recording conversation. So what you'll hear are our voice notes back and forth, reflecting a little bit more on this quad left and quad right as we introduce it. And I loved, as I was listening to it, I loved it because I think what you'll get is a little bit more of just our everyday talking voices and how we speak to each other and how we have these ahas. I know we do that live as well, but it really felt very homey, very aha. I think you could get a little bit more sense of our personalities because we didn't think we were going to be recording and throwing that out there. So it feels a little bit more introspective, a little bit more maybe not honest, but we didn't know we were going to record it. So maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
insightful.
Yeah. It's definitely more conversational, in the sense that like we're no one's listening in on our conversation. Only now you can.
Yeah, now you can.
Now you
So
can.
now you can. We really revisit those. And so when we talk about quad left and quad right, this is not an episode about quad right and quad left. However, we want to give just a quick introduction because I think it'll be really helpful for you as you're listening to the differences of that quad left and quad right. And specifically, this really lights me up and it's been really helpful for Michelle and I. Sarah gives us this insight of us working together and how we can utilize those arrows and how we might show up in a podcast format. So as you listen, think about those in your life and how you work together and maybe think about some of these things.
Yeah.
So for everybody with who's wondering what these quad left, quad right means, when you look at a chart of a human design, you'll see four arrows around the head. And they can, each individual arrow can either be pointing left or right. And there's lots of different combinations of those. Mine just happened to all face left, and Michelle's happened to face all right. Michelle, will you walk us around the head and high level? Talk about what
Yeah,
each arrow means?
absolutely. I think, because I had never even heard about the concept before, so it was all new to me. So, don't feel bad if you've never even heard of it either. But when you're looking at your chart, as Ali said, there's the arrows, there's four arrows, and each arrow really means something different. And whether they point left or right has an energetic kind of quality to the left or right facing. So really quickly, your arrows can mean everything from digestion, and that means like your body taking in information as well as food, your environment, and how your mind functions. So how you mentally perceive and filter information, your perspective, your motivation. So those are some of the things that those arrows mean. And left facing arrows, when I talk about the energetic quality, left facing, this is Allie, quad left, all four of her arrows are facing left. That quality of energy is more strategic, more focused, more active, and much more structured. And when they're all facing right, I'm sorry, when your arrows are facing right, and mine happen to all four be facing right, then that energy is more receptive, more open, more fluid, and passive. And so when we talk about quad left and quad right in terms of Ali and my energy and how we work in partnership, because so much of human design is like, yeah, how are you naturally inclined to function? And how does that interact with the world around you? So it really is so important to the quality of your partnerships, your collaborations, friendships, all of the things. But if you want to um, kind of look at it as like real life, your quad left, those are like your project managers. You want the like color coded. That's why Ali does like for some context, Ali does like all the editing on our podcast and really keeps us kind of organized in our Google Drive and kind of keeps things a little bit more structured. And she has a more active brain, so she's going to super and you'll hear about Sarah talking about it, and I think it'll provide a lot more insight into what we're talking about here. But she's definitely going to be more curious in the sense of like wanting to understand things and turn them inside out. Does that resonate? Am I missing
Yeah,
anything for
so I
you?
even think about we've been talking about going, this is a good example, about putting our video podcasts, putting more
Yeah.
video. And so again, I'm going to very like high level this. It's where it's like, yeah, let's for you it might be like, yeah, let's do that. Let's go. And immediately I start to be like, what are the nuances? Where's the impact to editing? How long will that transition? It's just like naturally where my brain goes.
Yeah.
So you kind of, we can see it in a lot of ways. I think we talk a little bit about examples in the episode as well. But what really I love about having these conversations is, as you know, I'm super passionate about, and I was when I was in the corporate space and still am of impacting the way people work together. Because
Hmm.
for me, I've just always felt this inner knowing and sense of like, it doesn't have to be that hard. We don't have to push against each other. And our relationship, we weren't, that wasn't even on our radar. And then what was interesting about when Sarah was talking about it is, I was having some of these thoughts, but it was more my insecurities of like, am I showing up this way? Is she showing up? Am I talking too much? Am I not giving her like it gives all of that awareness. And then when Sarah's able to say, actually, as a quad left, the way you're showing up makes a lot of sense. And the way Michelle's showing up as a quad right makes a lot of sense. And therein lies that place where I can stop the thinking and I don't overthink a ton with you because we have such a good relationship and we can be honest with each other.
Yeah.
But it also feels I get a little lit up because it's again just that I was intentionally made. I have intentional gifts
Hmm.
and you have different ones and we can put those together and it doesn't mean anything less about each other. It actually enhances. And that's what Sarah is giving us a chance to really see and dive into
Yeah.
with our quad left and quad right.
100%. Yeah. And so the quad right is like much more in flow. We're like the, quote unquote artists who want to let the mood and the moment dictate and guide. And we're all about kind of the vibe and the energetics. So what Ali's saying, like I'm usually pretty cool to just like jump on and go with the flow on most things because I'm super receptive. I want to respond to what's happening. And I don't, when I try to plan and be super strategic and structured, it does not work out for me. It's kind of like I plan and it fails. And when I'm open and I flow, things really build for me. And so Honestly, this is what I love about this concept in human design is that it super underscores the entire basis of karmic mirror, right? If everything we're
Mhm.
talking about in karmic mirror always comes back to how we are all, every person, everything is a mirror to one another, every relationship, right? We agreed to be in this working relationship and friendship, and we agreed to that we're going to reflect back to one another. And so when Ali talks about like insecurities, that's so real, right? We're always, not always, but I think that so often, and human design highlights this so cool in such a cool way, but more often than not, the things that we are deeply insecure about are because we've been told that how we naturally are meant to function is wrong. And
Yeah.
so when me, a super flowy, like, yeah, let's just jump in, let me just respond. And when I'm mirroring back to her, she's like, why can't, right? Like, quad left is going to be more challenged with going with the flow, whereas a quad right, like me, I'm going to be more challenged with structure. And so we're just like constantly mirroring back. But it's this beautiful idea that it's not about who's right or wrong, because both are so right for us. It's just about getting the best possible outcome. And when you can kind of like embrace the insecurity and the ego, and also embrace that you're going to be shown different aspects of yourself through another person, you get this cool, really cool, vulnerable, and expansive outcome. And I think that's what we hear so often and in these in our conversation, our voice notes that you'll hear next.
Yeah, and I think what's so beautiful about it is that you and I are someone who have these things on our radar already.
Hmm.
And just even expanding our community, I loved that to, for Sarah to have brought that up, I think it really resonated and really made me feel as though it was well timed. It was something that
Yeah.
was really well aligned to get on our radar and just start to think about. And again, we do a really good job, I think, of bending and flowing and understanding. And the first place I tend to go to if I'm like, why isn't she just giving me more detail? I have to like sit back and go, okay, she's in flow. And also for me, Michelle, I think to know each other or to know others, you
Yeah.
always say this helps us understand ourselves better. And so there are things like for me too, I do try and look of like, what are you scared about just jumping in without
Yeah,
prepping?
yeah, yeah, totally.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, or there have been instances when we've been recording or pre-recording where you're like, okay, and Michelle, tell us more about this. And I'm like, Allie, you have the answer. I know you're
Yeah.
teeing it up for me because this is our natural flow and it does work. And also, like, you know more than you're giving, like, you totally
Yeah.
understand this. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, it's the same reason why you'll be like, I think in the beginning, your really active brain and curiosity are will like, and our curiosity shows up in such wildly different ways, which is really cool. But you would ask me a question or tee up something, and my instinct would be to be like, or my instant reaction was like, okay, and why are you asking me? And then two line and quad right, I'm like always taking in and receiving, or don't, have to explain why I know something, which is so two line. And then I'll be like, oh, wait, I do know that. I do know something about that. I just didn't realize that I did, or I didn't think about it in the moment. And so it's just such a cool give and take. It is in a learning and yeah.
It's beautiful. And I think what I've felt is in our relationship and our recording, I have felt personally the flow, feel more in flow. Like it
Yeah.
feels because I think we see each other a little bit more. And like I can say to you, I'm just digging deeper and like don't if I throw you off or like we can just stop and re-edit that out. There's just so many ways and
Hmm.
examples we can give, but
Yeah.
all leading back to that quad left, quad right. What would we be remiss if we didn't throw out in this intro before we let our audience listen to our voice notes back and forth so they can learn a little bit more.
You know what? I think that's everything. I think whatever you're meant to pick up from these voice notes and, hearing them when we were in conversation was one experience. Going back and listening when you had the idea to put them onto an episode, um, highlighted even more because I kind of had forgotten about it. And, that's just how it is, especially with podcasts, with episodes. Like, I don't know about you, but there's so often times where I listen to part of something and, I hear whatever I'm meant to hear. And then I come back to it and I have an entirely new understanding because maybe something happened in my life that made that understanding land a little bit harder or differently. And so, I think we teed it up. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on the quad left and quad right simply because it can be an abstract concept, especially if you don't know human design. But if you're listening, it's possible that you do if you're listening
Hmm.
to Karmic Mirror.
Yeah. Because it's not the traditional place that most people start with in human
No, not
design
at all.
charts. That's why.
That's
So
exactly.
yeah, well, we hope you enjoy this window into our continued dialogue because, like we said, just when we hit stop record doesn't mean that the conversation and the lessons and the learning and the growth and self-love don't continue. So enjoy this dialogue as we invite you to join our conversation as Sarah, Michelle, and I really reflected post Sarah recording episode. All right, until next time, Karmic Mirrors, have a beautiful one.
Thanks, everyone.
The other thing was this actually connects directly to you and Michelle being quad left and quad right, and how you show up is like it's actually correct for you to be probably more active in the podcast. And I say that in a sense that you're closer to the screen, you're like focused in on what someone's saying, and Michelle's kind of sitting back a little bit, and she might have fewer questions because she's taking in a lot of what the guest is saying, and the questions that she will have are going to be like probably amazing questions. Not to say that yours aren't amazing too, but you're probably going to have more questions than she does because you have this strategic focused processing system. And so you're actually designed to be this like questioner. You're like pulling information out of people, whereas Michelle is meant to be pulled out of. So it's kind of a cool connection that you two have together because you can actually pull a lot of good stuff out of her. And then as you're talking, it's probably pinging her and vice versa. So I'm sure you experience that all the time. And I know we talked about that where you're like, yeah, Michelle's like, oh, I don't know anything about that. And then she starts talking about it and it's like, bleh, like there's a lot there that she actually does know about it. And she might think like, I don't know anything about this, but then she does. Um, so I think it's actually correct. And it made sense that maybe Michelle's sometimes more on the listening side and you may have more questions faster. And that's okay. Like I just think it's about being yourselves. And I mean, so much of your podcast is about honoring each other, and um, that's a perfect example of it. Like, you could also look at the quad left as the, especially with like a left active body that you have, Allie. You're meant to be like observed. Like you're active in your environment, you're observed in your environment, which means people are going to watch you, and when Michelle is correct in her environment, she's actually passive in her environment. I mean, she's watching other people. And so for you to be a little bit more active, kind of chiming in more in a podcast, it actually makes sense. And it's true to your designs. And for Michelle to chime in exactly when she feels called to, that's perfect for her. So just wanted to share that. I think it's pretty cool.
Hello. I have entered the conversation officially. And I've actually finally listened to your voice notes, Sarah, today. And thank you for your insights. I'm always really in awe at just how much you can hold in your, whether it's in your brain or just how much knowledge you can hold. And it always sparks something or, to look deeper into or to understand. And it's so cool. I always think about that we named the podcast Karmic Mirror because in every experience we're learning something. Like we're seeing ourselves through other people. We're seeing ourselves through through other people's perspective or their words or whatever it is. Or we're seeing people differently than maybe we would if we didn't have this space to have the conversation. And if we didn't, if Allie and I didn't create a podcast that wasn't super rigid in its approach approach so that we could welcome in the unexpected or just whatever magic kind of unfolds, and let that be enough and be really pleased with that. And so anyways, thank you so much for sharing that. I oftentimes, what came up as you were talking about the quad left, quad right, and in our engagement or participation in the podcast or response, I suppose, is that I can sometimes sense where, and maybe I'm going to word this wrong, but I think you both will have enough understanding to like pick up what I'm putting out there. But I oftentimes will notice where perhaps Allie is like, maybe worried isn't the right word, but concerned or aware if I'm not coming through, like as if she's not giving enough space, right? Like if you listen back to past episodes, Allie will say like, oh, well, I used to think this was selfish when I did this, right? And there's been like two different instances where the guest was like, that's not selfish, Allie. That's your process. Like, let it be okay. It's not selfish to talk about yourself. It's not this, right? And I think perhaps I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think maybe there's an essence of maybe I'm picking up on this energy of where I'm like, oh, should I do more because I don't want her to feel like she's taking all of the space, when I don't think that at all and I don't feel that at all. But I'm picking up that there's this almost feeling like, yeah, I don't know if any of that makes sense. It makes sense to me. So I guess that's good enough. But it's really lovely to have new language every time you share something, I think, because there's something about the way that you present human design that feels very much like maybe it's very aligned with the traditional approach to human design. Blah, 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 blah. You know who he is. His transmission and the way that he taught human design, that definitely lands, because I think so much of what we see in this little bubble on the internet that I live on is a more modern approach, and I love both. I love all of it. Like, it all just gives me different ways to digest the information, but it is really lovely to hear the way you describe things, because it's like putting new words to something that I felt and maybe didn't have, for whatever reason, didn't articulate or hadn't necessarily sat with that thought enough to let it, come to this conclusion. But it's really cool and I love it. And I love hearing about our relationship, our dynamic. And I think every time we have a guest on the episode, on the podcast, it's like, we just learn so much. We see so much. I see myself differently. I see Allie in a new light. I see the guest in a new, like, it's such a beautiful, continuous wave of just cool ripples into the world. And I, not secretly, but really, really hope that we get to have you on the podcast like all the time. We like whenever, like, as no pressure, but maybe, yeah, like whatever comes up, whatever happens organically. But it's just really cool to know that, you have this wealth of knowledge. And I think that, like I said, I think the way that you're expressing your knowledge and your intuition is very unique, because there are a lot of people that are maybe just wanting to make things more digestible for the collective. And that's such a beautiful thing. But sometimes you need that little bit of a deeper take, and you need that, like, I don't know. I always say, like, I want the people who are going to follow my crazy stream of consciousness that may or may not make sense or land in the moment, or maybe only one or two words out of like the 100 land. But I don't want to water myself down and have to be more concise all the time. I mean, there are moments where that's really necessary, but I want to let the people who can follow the thread or pick up where I drop off or whatever, and let me just be in that flow. And so I really love when I meet people who are like, did I say too much? And I'm like, no, because even if I don't get it, maybe I come back to it, or maybe you unlock something that I wanted to, or maybe I unconsciously, I didn't know that I wanted to go deeper into that. And now so anyways, all beautiful things. And thank you so much. And here's my 5-minute, almost 6-minute voice note.
I'm not gonna lie, this voice note thread feels like a birthday gift to me. this voice note group thread. And no expectations and no pressure, but I just got really fucking lit up hearing Michelle's response. I was like, oh my gosh, with our powers combined. Yes, Sarah, I know I've shared this with you, but it's one, Sarah, yes, just I love learning about Michelle and Mai's dynamic. And to you, Michelle, uh, you're never speaking out of turn. It's what I value about our relationship is I really trust, well, with both of you, but in this example, Michelle, just like always trust your intent. And, I love this example of just being able to like learn more about ourselves, even maybe the parts we don't like, or maybe the parts we cringe about, and just feeling safe in that because it's all ourselves. And yeah, it is, this space thing and making sure everybody has enough space. I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't something that's on my mind, and there's a very like technical, logical place to it. It's very gift 37 as well, I feel like. But do I wish that it felt more in flow for me without, it's at a place where it's like and I know I've shared this with both of you, like I know it's like in my head, but I don't like know it to be true like in my soul and my heart yet, right? It's like I'm like on that precipice of getting there and for all of the things. So anyways, that's what kind of came up for me, if that makes sense in response to what you just said, Michelle. And if you're not listening to these back to back and it's a while, maybe it wouldn't make sense. But anyways, what else was I going to say? Yeah, literally, I was like, I'm gonna one off Michelle uh, to to be like, yeah, let's see if Sarah wants to come on a regular basis. And no pressure, Sarah. But then you said in your message, right as I said that, you said, and like come back on and you were totally your generator was just like beaming in that moment, and so it just was again confirmation. But Sarah, maybe Michelle and I'll talk and then like give you something to be invited to or whatever, and so you can do your process thing, girlfriend. But yeah, I think there's just so many like really cool topics we could talk about. And I feel really passionate about how human design, how all of the esoteric systems that help us better understand ourselves can be used to just make quote unquote working together like more efficient, effective, effortless for everybody's highest good. Shocker, shocker. But so, there's something about Sarah and I being 3/5s and like, throwing Michelle in the mix too of sharing some of these examples with the collective, I think could be really helpful and beneficial in some of these topics too. And anyways, just responding on that. Oh my gosh, Allie, you're just such a beautiful, sweet soul. I love listening to your voice notes. And a few things were coming up for me as you were talking. And I have to say, I did not expect, but I absolutely loved how much of like a coming home type of like reflective episode it was as well for you two to both like reflect on like the beginning of your podcast, how I was like there to like initiate like your intake form process and kind of like your vision behind it and everything. And then me and you, like our journey together. And I didn't think that it would be that personal, but of course it was. 1, 2, 3, 5. We're both there talking about our third line experiences, but I also have personal view in human design. So a lot of what I talk about is through my personal lens. A lot of what I learned, a lot of what I reflect. It's because I've integrated it personally and I've had to experience it personally. And so absolutely, like it was a good call to like ask me about my experiences because a lot of richness comes out of that and it helps me stay in my correct view, which is that personal view. And it's helpful for me to talk about things that I've personally gone through, or I can reflect it to my personal experiences. So one of my taglines for my like my YouTube channel that I wrote is like, yeah, it's personal. And it's because like, yeah, it is really personal for me. I have a personal view in human design. And then I was also thinking about you commenting saying like the sharing the floor with like you and first Michelle, and like how much space you're taking, how much space she's taking, how much space you let your guests take. And I really appreciated that about both of you. It's like it was really highlighting your guest. And that's one of my pet peeves when I listen to other people's podcasts, is like if they're trying to like speak over their guest too much. It's really frustrating for me because I'm like, sorry, babe, like I didn't come here to like hear from you. Like if I want to hear from you, I'll listen to one of your solo podcasts, or catch you on a video somewhere. But like I tuned in because I want to hear your guest. And so I really appreciated you all both. I felt like there was a lot of space there for me to have the floor. And I don't know, you never interrupted me, which was great. And I mean, editing, you can always just take out a section if you're like, she kind of went off and over a little, like, she kind of went off on her own little thing over there. I'm not really sure if our guests will, like, we'll crop it out or something, like I am totally fine with that. But I appreciate it. I just felt like I had a lot of space. The other thing was, this actually connects directly to you and Michelle being quad left and quad right, and how you show up is like it's actually correct for you to be probably more active in the podcast. And I say that in a sense that you're closer to the screen, you're like focused in on what someone's saying, and Michelle's kind of sitting back a little bit, and she might have fewer questions because she's taking in a lot of what the guest is saying. And the questions that she will have are going to be like probably amazing questions. Not to say that yours aren't amazing too, but you're probably going to have more questions than she does because you have this strategic focused processing system. And so you're actually designed to be this like questioner. You're like pulling information out of people, whereas Michelle is meant to be pulled out of. So it's kind of a cool connection that you two have together, because you can actually pull a lot of good stuff out of her. And then as you're talking, it's probably pinging her, vice versa. So I'm sure you experience that all the time. And I know we talked about that, where you're like, yeah, Michelle's like, oh, I don't know anything about that. And then she starts talking about it, and it's like, bleh, like there's a lot there that she actually does know about it. And she might think like, I don't know anything about this, but then she does. So I think it's actually correct. And it made sense that maybe Michelle is sometimes more on the listening side, and you may have more questions faster, and that's okay. Like, I just think it's about being yourselves. And I mean, so much of your podcast is about honoring each other, and that's a perfect example of it. Like, you could also look at the quad left as especially with like a left active body that you have, Allie. You're meant to be like observed. Like, you're active in your environment, you're observed in your environment, which means people are going to watch you. And when Michelle is correct in her environment, she's actually passive in her environment. I mean, she's watching other people. And so for you to be a little bit more active, kind of chiming in more in a podcast, it actually makes sense. And it's true to your designs. And for Michelle to chime in exactly when she feels called to, that's perfect for her. So just wanted to share that. I think it's pretty cool. Okay, just responding before I lose all of this. Oh my gosh, Michelle, so cool to be reminded. What I wanted to share in this group thread was that, Sarah, when you were talking about like active and passive, here's what came up for me was that, and pulling in like full circle, Michelle, what you were talking about too is like, one, just being conscious of like, am I taking up too much space? Is everybody getting equal space, right? Like, are guests getting majority of space? Like, yes, I tend to keep an eye on that. But here's what I kind of noticed in episodes with guests. I get really aware of like I'll see Michelle, and now it just makes so much sense because I start to feel like I'm asking all these questions and asking questions and going and going and going and like feeling really lit up and just being like, oh, am I giving Michelle enough space? And um, yeah, like it really is. It's like when there is time for pause and to slow down and like like that's how I see it come out for Michelle. Like she's just taking in what she's meant to be taking in, and then you know, then just like beautiful stuff comes out. So it's really cool to see that. And then the dichotomy, if that's the right word, of like on our episodes where it's just Michelle and I get, and this is just me, like a story I tell myself is that like it's the imposter syndrome. Like you don't even add that much. Like Michelle knows all of this stuff, like very her two line, like, right? She's held on to all of this information. And then when it comes up, it just like flows out of her. And that's, that's, that's not how my energy works, right? So the more I've been like doing this work on this stuff and just like recognizing like I'm allowed to show up as I'm allowed to show up, like this also felt very timely and like beautifully timed because then I was like, I had this epiphany of like, oh my gosh, like on guest episodes, you take up too much space. But then, like, when it's you and Michelle, you get imposter syndrome. But again, it just gives that language to be like, no, that would make sense that on these topics, uh, that I'm asking Michelle more questions and right and drawing out of her all of that beautiful knowledge on the topic that is a gift of hers. And that gift doesn't mean that I'm deficient, right? It's just because that comes naturally for you and not for me doesn't equal value. It's just like a beautiful gift that's how it can show up. So anyways, these are just really, really cool discussions. And just again, thank you for creating such safe spaces because as the 3-5, this is the way I can have so many fucking epiphanies and just helps life be more easeful. So yeah, it's beautiful here. I've been getting out a little bit too, just like really soaking in this weather has been good for the soul. No, I just wanted to chime in with my voice for a minute and just say how much I enjoyed listening to your voice notes, both of you, and to your reflections. And Ali, I love that this felt like a birthday gift to you to just help you relax and to being yourself. And um, especially in your partnership with Michelle, because you have such a beautiful partnership. And it's like on your higher soul level, that you're not taking up too much space, so you're not like dominating in the conversations, but on a like moment to moment basis there was that questioning there, and so I'm glad that you can put that to rest and just enjoy your differences and know that you're going to be like jumping in with those strategic questions, and that Michelle may be sitting back taking it all in and then popping out her question when she's ready. And um I I think that for you, Ali, it's really good to remember that without the strategic left people, there's nobody to pull the goods out of the right. And so whenever you mentioned, like, you can just ask Michelle something and she'll just be like, bleh, and like come out with all these amazing things. That's her rightness. She's just got it like stored in there. It's not to say that you don't store information as well. It's just a little bit of a different dynamic where like you more so know what you know, but Michelle, I'm sure on the opposite side, oftentimes doesn't know what she knows until she starts talking. And then she's like, oh, wow, I guess I did know stuff about that. And Michelle, I hear your recognition too for my information and what I share. I can say that I straddle the line between you, Ali, and you, Michelle, because I am half and half. I'm left on half of my variables and half right. And so I am also receptive in my mind like you are, Michelle. So I store a lot of information and I have no freaking clue how much I know until I start talking and someone is pulling it out of me. So that's why it's fun to be on podcasts for me too, because the questions that you ask is it's going to pull information out. And then I get to hear it oftentimes for like the first time. And I'm also surprised by how cool it is. And but my body is active. So I understand Allie too, because I've got like a busy body and a busy brain that keeps me more engaged in my space and like in your face as opposed to relaxing backwards. And I just think it's really cool to like see these dynamics at play. And I just love your partnership. Michelle, I could say again, I really enjoyed what you said about the karmic mirror being a great tool for you and Allie's evolution and understanding of yourselves because you see yourself through all of your guests. I think that's so beautiful. And I would love to come on anytime. We can talk about anything. I've looked into a lot of stuff. I mean, it can even be one where it's more open for you two to share things that are going on in your world. And yeah, who knows? But I'm open. I'm interested at least. And yeah, I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. So I could probably talk to a lot of things. But it's hard to give you exact topics at the moment because I need it kind of pulled out of me. Anyway, hope you all have a great weekend. Obviously, feel free to chime in here again into this chat, but just sending you all lots of love.
Okay, and the last thing I'll say is my favorite thing to say that it's the last thing because it's never the last thing. But Sarah, thank you so much for saying that about the passive and taking in and observing, because I've talked about this a little bit with Allie. And I think, again, more examples of giving language to things that I knew and felt, but love having it just reflected back to me and through your wording and your understanding, because there are so many instances. And I was just telling Allie recently about how, like, I go to these events with my husband sometimes, and they're his work events, and I'm like out of the loop. Like sometimes I sit at an entire table and everyone is having a conversation, and I'm like really content to sit back. And in my head, sometimes I hear this like where it's like, oh, shouldn't you feel a certain type of way? Like, shouldn't you feel like you're being left out of a conversation? When then I check myself in those moments because I'm like, no, I actually really enjoy being able to like sit back and pop in here and there, but like I never feel a pressure that I need to be in it. And it's such a fascinating thing to reflect back on. It happens, or even I've been places with Allie where she's like noticed, like, we're observing the way that we go into social situations. Whereas like we use the confetti project, we went to this event in Brooklyn, and Allie is like very like, it's funny because I consider myself incredibly social, but I'm really selectively social. And I spent most of my working life like running massive teams and being in front of people. And I really thrive on that energy. Like I love being out. But again, there's that two line where I want to just like retreat. And there's a point where I would get really exhausted and be like, all right, well, like, and then I'd start turning into kind of a cranky bitch. And so, where was I going with that? Anyways, it's fascinating to witness, whereas like when we both walk into a social setting, physically walk into a social setting together, Allie wants to like go and chat with people and connect and instantly and I want to take a few minutes to get the lay of the land. And usually what it feels like is that my energy feels bombarded. When I walk into spaces, like when I walk into a party, and it's such a weird duality because, Keith and I, my husband, we used to host a lot of parties, and I do a lot of things. I mean, I was the president of our Rotary Club last year. Like I'm constantly in front of crowds having to talk to people at fundraising events or whatever it is. But there's something about that balance that I really thrive in, where I can walk into a space and know and anticipate that for the first few minutes, I'm going to be taking in a lot of energy. And it can feel, if I'm not aware, it can can feel overwhelming because it feels like so much is coming at me. And I need a second to like figure out, get a lay of the land. And then once I'm locked in, I feel really good, like bouncing around from different conversations. I don't really tend to get stuck in a one-on-one for too long. Like I need to kind of like move and work the room. And I feel really, I don't know, I feel really good about those situations. And then when it's time to go, I gotta go. And and I have this like, that saying like joy of missing out. It's like fascinating, the duality of loving to work a room and loving to speak to groups of people and loving to like have that. And I guess that's that fifth line perhaps, but also having such sweet joy of missing out because I just don't, once I'm done, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, good. I don't care what goes on. I don't need to be a part of it. And it's such a cool thing. And so anyways, you made me think about that aspect of my design through your voice note. And so thanks for, again, sparking some more, just like this web of little light bulb moments of like just connecting the dots of things that I feel and know to be true about myself. And now have this beautiful like reflection back from you of like, yes, that is you. And you do you. And I love that so much. So anyways, thanks. And yeah, that's all. I hope you guys both have a really beautiful weekend. Well, I mean, obviously I'm going to talk to Allie. I hope you enjoy the spring. It's so freaking amazing to have the sun today.
Thanks for tuning in. If you resonate with today's conversation, connect with us on Instagram at Karmic Mirror Podcast and send us a message.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're loving Karmic Mirror, we'd appreciate a glowing review or a share with someone who could benefit.
As we close, remember, life is not a one-size-fits-all approach. How are you honoring your unique path? Stay curious and always be kind to yourself. Until next time on Karmic Mirror.